Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm one of the technicians, and I'll be showing you today how to do your refractions. So this is our phoropter. Before we start, we're going to use our auto-refraction, or the patient's auto-refraction, as a starting point. So we have right eye up here, this is left eye. On the phoropter, it's just backwards, so this is their right eye, and this is their left eye. So on this side, this dial here is for the sphere. So the sphere tells you if they are nearsighted or farsighted. And basically, if you see a minus sphere, which is what this patient has, it's a minus 0.75. So that patient is considered myopic, so they are nearsighted. So they can see up close but have trouble seeing far away. So I'm going to dial in the minus 0.75 right here. So right now we're at minus 2.75. So I'm going to move this until I get to the minus 0.75, which is right there. Next, we have the cylinder, which is right there, and this says it's a minus 1. So the cylinder tells you their astigmatism, which basically is the shape of their cornea. So when they have astigmatism, their cornea is more football shaped as opposed to being rounder. So this dial here will be our cylinder. Now we're in minus cylinder, and some phoropters come in plus cylinder, and you can tell by looking at these numbers here and the colors. So when they're red, you're in minus cylinder, and when they're black, you're in plus cylinder. So we're at minus 0.75. We want to get to minus 1. We'll turn it right there, so now it's at minus 1. And the last part of the prescription is the axis, which is at 134. So that's the cylinder axis. It tells you where their astigmatism lies and what plane. So right here is our axis. It goes from 0, which is really 180, all the way back to 180, and then back around to 180 again. So if we want to go to 134, each line represents 5 degrees. So we can't put in 134, but we're going to round to the nearest 5. So this back dial here, we're going to move until we get to 135, which is right about there. Alright, so once everything is in the phoropter, we're going to make sure that these dials are on the O for open. When you close it, or close the patient's eye, we're going to turn this to OC, which is occluded. And then in here, you won't be able to see their eyes, so it'll be occluded for them. So always keep both eyes open. We're also going to dial in our PD measurement, which is the pupil distance, which will also be on the autorefractor as well. Here it's 60. So this knob here can increase or decrease our PD. So we'll keep it at 60. So when the patient is sitting in the chair, we're going to bring this, I always bring it close to them, but you don't want to touch their forehead, you want them to meet you. So once you're leveled, I always look in these ocular holes here to look at their eyes, and once I can see their eyes in that phoropter, I'm going to tell them to meet me to the phoropter. Last thing before you start is you want this to be balanced or leveled. So there's a little leveler built in, and this top knob here will turn until that bubble is lined up with that white dot on the leveler. So once it's leveled, that will make sure that our axis is being correctly measured, not too misaligned. And then we're just going to occlude the left eye. So we'll keep the right eye open, left eye is closed, and then from there you want to see what the patient can see with that prescription. So don't always assume that they can see 20/20 with this prescription. So I always give them a few lines on the board going from 20/50 to 20/20, and I ask them what the smallest line they can see is. If they can see 20/20, then that's good, but I'm going to start them at 2 lines above that, because if they're struggling to see 20/20, they're going to struggle to see the differences between the 1 and 2 when I ask them on the phoropter. So we're going to single out one line, leave it at 20/30 now. So this way they're more comfortable to read those letters. So the first part when you're refracting is asking the sphere, which is on this side here. And I always tell the technicians to go in the more plus direction as opposed to going more minus. When patients are myopic, especially when they have a minus sphere, they usually eat more minus and they like more minus. But basically, as you give them more minus, the letters become smaller and darker, and they perceive that as clearer. But if you keep giving them too much minus, they think it looks clearer, but it'll be way too strong for them afterwards. So when they have glasses with that prescription, it'll make them nauseous or just thrown off balance. So bring it back to where we started. I'll go in the more plus direction first. So I'm going to ask them, is that line clearer with 1? I'll wait a couple seconds for them to register, or with 2. If they do like 1, which is the more plus direction, you want to keep going in that same direction. So then you'd ask them to do better with 1 or 2. If they didn't like the more plus, then you can try going in the more minus direction. So we'll say it's a better 1 or 2. If they like 1, which is more minus, I always ask them if it's a big difference. So if it's a small difference or they're pretty close, you want to leave it on the maximum plus. If it does make a big difference to them, then you can give them that minus. And you can keep going in that same direction until they're either about the same or they're close. And then in that case, I would give them the more plus sphere. So once sphere is done, we're going to use this, which is called the Jackson cross cylinder, or you can call it JCC for short. This will move over there, and then we want to turn this front part. So this front part turns all the way around, and it clicks in 2 spots. It clicks at that spot there, and it clicks at that spot as well. So after sphere, we're checking their axis now. For their axis, you want these little knobs on this front part of the JCC to line up with our axis on the dial. So right now, if I were to hold my pen up, this is not lined up with our axis. So I'm going to turn this, and it clicks for me. But now you can see that these are both lined up and parallel with each other. So that means that we're good and we're in the right spot to measure their axis. So to start, we're going to move these little knobs on this front part of the JCC. And it's the same lens in there, so you can go in the same direction or you can go back and forth. But we're going to ask them if that line is clearer with 1 or with 2. So the tricky part is that there's 2 red dots and there's 2 white dots. And when we're in minus cylinder, we're going to be chasing the red dot, which I'll explain. When you're in plus cylinder, we'll be chasing the white dot. So that's the biggest difference between plus cylinder and minus cylinder. Now, depending on where you're standing and looking at these P's and those little colored dots, it'll appear, or those dots will appear either on the left side of the knob or the right side of the knob. And the knob, I mean by this little knob here. So if we're looking at it straight on, we can see that the P here is facing us, and this P is kind of upside down. So I want to chase the red dot, which is right here, and I'm looking at this one here because this P is more facing us as opposed to this one. Now this red dot is on the left-hand side of this knob. So we're going to move the axis 15 degrees as the first step to the left. So we're chasing this red dot here. So we're going to go 5, 10, 15 degrees and stop there. Then we're going to ask again, is it better with 1 or better with 2? If they still like 2, we're looking at the red dot again, and it's left of this knob. So we would still go 15 degrees to the left. But if they change directions, if they liked this one better, now that red dot is right of this knob. So when you change directions, we're going to go down by 5-degree increments. So if we went 15 degrees last time, now we're going to go to the right only 10 degrees. And then we'll ask again if it's better with 1 or better with 2. If it's still 2, the red dot is still to the right, same direction, So we would go 10 degrees more to the right. But if again they change their minds and change directions, and they're like on the left-hand side now, then we would go to the left 5 degrees. And at that point you can stop there. Or if at any point when you're asking better with 1 or 2, and they say the same, you can also stop right there. So that axis part is neutralized when they're about the same. And then last part is measuring the cylinder power. So we're going to, again, just turn this so that now the P's are lined up with our axis on the dial there. And they'll click in the right spot when you're at that spot. So again, now we're only looking at the color dots where the P's are. They're going to be either both red, which they are right now, or both white. So there's no more chasing any dots, you're looking only at the color dots where the P's are. So we're going to ask them if it's better with 1 or with 2. If they like 2, which is this one here, the P's are white. And when they're white, you're going to give a quarter more plus in their cylinder. So if we're at -1, more plus would be minus 0.75, which is just less minus. Less minus, more plus are the same things. And then we'll ask again if it's better with 1 or better with 2. If they like 1, now the P's are red, and red means more minus. So we would give a quarter more minus. At that point we can stop because we went down to 0.75 and then back to 1. So they might be or have a SIL anywhere between a minus 0.75 and a -1. Maybe they're a minus 0.87, but we don't know because these only measure in quarters. So if you go back down and then back up, I would leave it where your starting point was of the refraction. If you really wanted to check them, you could take this cross cylinder away and just ask them if it's better with 1 or 2. And if they pick a specific one, let's say it's 0.75, then we'll leave it right there. So after you measured their sphere, axis, and cylinder, you want to leave this as is, and you want to push them to see the best they can see. So you can leave that same line there, and you can just go down and say, can they read those letters? And try to push them as close to 20/20 as possible. After they read that, you're going to open up both eyes, and then close the right eye, and then do the same thing for their left eye.